Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to another video. My name is Stan, and in this video, I want to show off a CFexpress memory card that I've got right here. This is by NKI. This company reached out and asked if I wanted to take a look at their memory card, and of course I agreed. So they sent one over, and I think this is actually one of the best value bang for the buck CFexpress memory cards that you can buy. So you certainly should check it out if you are in the market. Now, if you're in the market for CFexpress memory cards, you've probably looked at Sony, ProGrade, SanDisk, but the problem with these memory cards is that they're extremely expensive. A 500 gigabyte memory card can usually cost $500, $1 per gigabyte, but this one comes in at only $300 for 512 gigabytes. So there has to be a catch, right? How can you be $200 cheaper than the competitor while listing the same specs as your competitors? What I'll do is run some real world tests and some synthetic benchmarks to kind of show you guys how it compares with a couple other CFexpress memory cards. But before that, let's take a look at what we have on the box. Again, this is the 512 gigabyte version of the Kinetic Plus. On their website, they have advertised that a 1 terabyte and a 256 gigabyte version is coming soon. One caveat is that usually as you get larger and larger in capacities, speeds generally increase. So I can only speak for the 512 gigabyte version for all my tests. On the box it says it's good for 8K raw recording, it's got a 3-year warranty, and it's made out of 96 layers of 3D NAND. And that's primarily why I think they're able to achieve such great densities or great capacities is using that 96 layers of 3D NAND, the multi-layer NAND. The problem with so many layers is that the performance usually degrades or is not as fast. So the advertised read is up to 1700 megabytes per second, and advertised write is 1500 megabytes per second burst with 400 megabytes per second write sustained, and more on this later. For the compatibility, it should be compatible with most Canon cameras that use CFexpress. So the 1DX Mark III, R5, C300 Mark III, C500 Mark II, and it also lists a bunch of Nikon cameras, D5, D6, D850, D500, Z6, 7, 6.2, 7.2. But it does also have a caveat that says that if your camera is an XQD camera, maybe a firmware is required. So that's all pretty standard and whatnot. Now, as for the card itself, physically, it's the same as every other CFexpress card. In fact, compared to my 325 gigabyte Cobalt card, the form factor, the build, the material of construction is virtually identical. Even the little divots of the shell where, I don't know if it's a CFexpress requirement or whatnot, but it almost looks like it came off of the exact same production line as the ProGrade card. The only difference is that the NKI Kinetic Plus doesn't have any engraving on the back, and of course the sticker on the front is different with its own sticker. So build wise, it's exactly what you would expect in a CFexpress card. As for performance here, my camera of choice is the Canon R5. It's a great camera that has a lot of very, very high bitrate recording modes, namely 8K RAW and 4K 120. Now, 8K RAW has a codec bitrate of 2600 megabits per second, and sometimes some of the slower CFexpress cards actually start to fill the buffer and struggle, and recording sometimes even just cuts out. So 2600 megabits per second is essentially 325 megabytes per second. At a 400 sustained write speed, on paper, it should be fine. And indeed, after all my testing, I threw all sorts of recording modes on it, shooting photos as well as videos. And basically it had no problems with anything I threw at it. In fact, the camera overheated well before any throttling or buffering issues. So 8K RAW wasn't an issue, 4K 120 wasn't an issue, all of the 4K high quality modes weren't an issue, 4K 60, not a problem. So basically, if you have a R5, there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't use this card. Now, just because it works with the camera doesn't actually tell you the whole story with this card, because of the construction of the 96 layer of 3D NAND, the sustained write is a little bit slower than something like the ProGrade Cobalt. The performance of this is going to be a little bit more similar to something like the ProGrade Gold cards with the lower sustained writes. In order to truly understand what's going on, we'll have to take a look at the synthetics. Loading the CFexpress card in my card reader here and connecting it to my Mac and loading up AJA disk test here, and writing a 16 gig file, 4K, 10-bit RGB file in continuous read and write mode. What you'll find is that the continuous write fluctuates between 400 to 500, sometimes a little bit more, but generally right around there, megabytes per second. And on the read side, it tops out at 900 megabytes per second. So that 900 megabytes per second is probably the limit of the card reader, not so much the card, but certainly we see a difference in read and write in sustained modes. Again, perfectly fine for the Canon EOS R5 in all of its write modes, but the write is a little bit slower than read. For reference here, I loaded the ProGrade Cobalt card and did the exact same test, and it was able to do 940 write and 940 read. Basically, again, the limit of the card reader, so it maxed it out. Now, I do want to point out that comparing these two cards head to head isn't exactly fair, because the Cobalt card is in a class above something like the Kinetic. A more fair comparison would have been something like the ProGrade Gold with this card right here. And in my experience in the past, the ProGrade Gold 256 CFexpress card, even though it had a rating of, again, almost the 400 megabytes per second write and 1700 megabytes per second read, the sustained write was actually even lower than this card right here, and I did have trouble with the Gold card with this camera. That card started to buffer, basically just didn't work with this camera. So again, I'm happy to report that the 512 works great. To sum it all up here, the 512 Kinetic Plus card is insane value, because coming in at $299 MSRP, it is almost $200 cheaper than competitor 512 cards from SanDisk, from Sony, from ProGrade. And even the 325 Cobalt card right here is about $100 more expensive than this. Yes, it has a slower sustained write speed, but it is still faster than what you need for a camera from the top of the line cameras with the highest codecs. And the read speeds are just as fast. In other words, again, my 2 cents here is that if you have write speeds that is sufficient for what you need, and you have extremely fast read speeds that you're able to pull data off to your camera or to your computer, that's all you need. You don't necessarily need extremely fast write speeds, because if you're faster than the camera can write, then you're fine. From a little known company or a longevity perspective, I don't think the longevity of the card should be a concern, or because the build quality, again, is identical to all other CFexpress cards. Flash memory is a proven technology. Flash is very stable. It's not going to be failing on you. And with a 3-year warranty, and on top of that, the likelihood of memory cards failing is so low, I don't think it should be that big of a concern. And again, if you're recording something that is irreplaceable, certainly get a camera with a SD card and a CFexpress card and record to both cards. Best practices and whatnot. But I don't see any reason why the fact that it is from NKI should deter you from looking into picking up this card. I think this is a very compelling product For the price, for the performance, and for the capacity, I would certainly look into it. If you decided to purchase this card and you want to support this channel, I'll leave my affiliate links in the description down below for your convenience as well. Anyway, my name is Stan, and if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button and comment down below. Tell me what kind of cards you're using, and did you actually pick up one of these Kinetic Plus cards? As always, my name is Stan, and I'll see you guys in the next one.